After Mario Kart 8's 96 tracks, it feels a little weird going from that to 30. I think it's safe to say Nintendo has DLC planned for Mario Kart World at some point. Realistically, it probably won't be for a couple months or even a year until we get it, but why not start discussing it now? In this video, I'm going to be predicting possible DLC tracks for Mario Kart World. Before we get into the tracks, I wanted to discuss the possibility of DLC characters. If you're not interested in this part of the video, just skip ahead to the time on screen now. The reason I want to discuss characters first is because some of the tracks I'm predicting could potentially tie into these new characters. Now you're probably thinking, this game already has an abundance of characters, why would it need more? And that's very true, but there are a few staple characters I think are missing from the bunch. If Nintendo does add a few more characters as DLC, I doubt it would be that many. The roster's already massive, but there are 8 in particular that I think could potentially come in the future. The first of which should be an obvious one, Diddy Kong. For a while, it seemed as if Nintendo was trying to erase Diddy Kong. He barely appeared in the Mario movie, he isn't found anywhere in this game after being added to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and he only appears briefly in one of the newer Donkey Kong Bonanza trailers. But clearly he's not being erased entirely if he does play somewhat of a role in Donkey Kong Bonanza. Therefore, I think the return of DK's partner in crime would make a ton of sense. Alongside Diddy Kong, I think 2 more members of the DK crew could come to Mario Kart World. The first of which is Funky Kong. Funky Kong is an iconic racer in the Mario Kart franchise, that bringing him back after his reprise in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe only makes sense. The other member of the Kong clan I think could come to Mario Kart World is Dixie Kong. Dixie Kong is one of the major characters in Donkey Kong Country, so bringing her in with Diddy Kong and Funky Kong only makes sense to me. The next 2 characters I think could come back from Mario Kart 8 are Petey Piranha and Dry Bowser. Both of these characters are fan favorites and play decent sized roles in certain mainline Mario games. Bringing these 2 back is a no-brainer. Now I do have a bit of an odd prediction, but I wouldn't be surprised if it came true. I could easily see Queen Bee from Mario Kart 7 returning. She's really one of the very few previous Mario Kart characters to not be in this game, so why not just complete the roster? My last 2 predictions are both racers from Mario Kart Tour who have yet to shine in a mainline Mario Kart game. The first of which is King Bob-omb. King Bob-omb is an iconic villain in the Mario universe, so he would fit in easily with the rest of the cast. The next one may be a bit of a surprise, but I could see Nintendo adding Poochie to the game. Poochie may not be one of the most iconic Mario characters, but he's so adorable, and after his inclusion in Tour, I think an appearance in this game is more than possible. So those are potential DLC characters I think we could get in the future. I also think we could get DLC costumes as well, both for some of the new characters, as well as some of the characters already in the game. I don't want to spend a ton of time discussing potential costumes just because the costumes in this game generally tend to follow the same themes. The characters who I think could benefit from a few more costumes are Donkey Kong, Pauline, Rosalina, Bowser Jr., Birdo, and Shy Guy. These characters either don't have enough costumes or could just use one more to set them apart. Anyway, now for the segment you all came here for, the tracks. I think if Nintendo does add DLC to this game, they'll do what they did with the Booster Course Pass and double the game. Plus, I only have the energy to predict 30 tracks. The base game has 30 tracks in total, 16 of which are new, 14 are retro. For the DLC, I'm going to predict 16 retro tracks and 14 new tracks. I think this makes sense because it'll even out the game at 30 new tracks and 30 retro tracks in total. And it's more fun to discuss returning tracks rather than me pulling new tracks out of my ass. What I think makes the most sense for Nintendo to do is create another island, full of the DLC tracks. I think that just makes the original world less complex and separates them nicely. For this new island, I debated what the simplest way to list off each track would be. What I did was I divided up this fictional island into regions, similar to how Mario Kart World does, and I'll list off all the tracks I had for each region. The first track I want to discuss is the track that's going to link the 2 islands together. I feel like in free roam, there should be some sort of barrier between the 2 maps, but to get across, there's a certain track you can drive through. I was thinking this track could take you all the way up to the sky to get across this barrier. The name I came up with for this track is Skyway Highway. Obviously, it would be kind of just a highway in the clouds. As likely the first track of the DLC, it wouldn't be a very hard track, but I think it'd be cool if Nintendo leaned into the visuals to create excitement for the tracks ahead. This track should also be easy to drive on backwards since it's supposed to connect the two maps, so you need to be able to use it from either side. Okay, now let's get onto the specific regions like I talked about. I think it makes sense to start with the grass region. We'll start with the retro tracks I have in this area. The first retro track I see being added is Luigi Circuit from Mario Kart Wii. Luigi didn't really get any recognition in the base game, so I think having Luigi Circuit as maybe an early simple track in this game makes sense. I could also see Luigi's Mansion being added as a track as it fits into a foresty area and could be used as a potential haunted themed track for the map. I also think Wild Woods from Mario Kart 8 could get a spot in a forest area. I was surprised to see that none of the tracks in Mario Kart 8 got a remake in World. Well, there's Sky High Sunday, but that track was more from the Booster Course Pass. I think Nintendo's saving some of 8's tracks for potential DLC. Wild Woods would also be a super fun place to explore and free roam. The track is incredibly detailed in Mario Kart 8, so I'd love to explore it to its entirety. The last retro track I wanted to predict is Banshee Boardwalk. Now yes, this isn't really a grassy track at all, but I was thinking it could be near Luigi's Mansion, and the only reason I bring it up now is just because I think it doesn't really warrant a region of its own, so it could kinda just be near the water of the grass region, something like that. Now time for new tracks in the grass region. I always thought it'd be really cool to have a track themed around the original Super Mario Bros. It wouldn't have to look exactly like the game since it might be hard to fit that kind of art style in with the rest of the world, but it's definitely possible still. This track could be called Retro Raceway. I was also thinking a track themed around the Flower Kingdom from Mario Wonder would be incredible. All the hazards the Wonder Flowers could cause would be bonkers. This track could be called Wonder Flower Frenzy. And lastly, if Nintendo does decide to bring back Diddy Kong, I think it's about time he gets a track themed around him. The track could be called Diddy Kong Temple. It would mostly just be a temple, of course, but there could be lots of Diddy Kong racing Easter eggs hidden inside. Moving on to the beach region, one of the retro tracks I'm predicting is Cheep Cheep Lagoon. Sure, it's not one of the more glamorous Mario Kart tracks, but now that you can't drive underwater, I think there's some interesting things they could do with the cave section. A more exciting retro track I'm predicting is Delfino Square. With Pianta in the game, I think this track would feel very fitting. Another beach track I'm predicting is Woohoo Island. The reason I'm calling it Woohoo Island is that I think Nintendo could merge Woohoo Loop and Maka Woohoo into one track. This would mean that you get two variants of this track, similar to Crown City and Peach Stadium. So you're kinda getting two tracks in one. The last retro track I'm predicting for the beach region is Daisy Cruiser. Now yes, Daisy Cruiser was just remade in the Booster Course Pass, but so is Choco Mountain and that's already in the game. I think Daisy Cruiser would be a really cool addition because the track could potentially move around in the water independently. Of course, it'd appear in the same location during Grand Prix and Knockout Tour, but in free roam, it could move anywhere. Plus, the theme for this track is already in the game because of Peach Beach, so I think it'd be a cool addition. I have a handful of tracks I made that I'd sorta consider part of the beach region but are closer to being water tracks. The first one is sort of like an obstacle course in the water. I was thinking it could be called a Blooper Playground. I think this could be another fairly easy track that could be played on your way to the island after completing Skyway Highway. I also think a track that leans into a similar beach party vibe that Koopa Troopa Beach has would be really cool. There could be beach volleyball being played, lots of enemies to avoid while they're lounging on the beach, stuff like that. I couldn't really come up with a clever name for this one, so Party Beach will have to do. The last water track I came up with is a track themed around an ocean storm. After Wario's Galleon, I think a track that really leans into crazy water conditions would be incredible. There could be a whirlpool, boats and debris everywhere, even a tsunami if they could get that to work. The track could also be really open because it takes place in the ocean. I was thinking this track could be called Ocean Stormfront. Okay, next up, the snow region. I only have two tracks for this region. I was thinking Sherbertland from Mario Kart 64 might be cool, especially since you could drive off of it right into the water to make free roam easy. The other snow track I was thinking of is Mount Wario. Mount Wario is one of the best new tracks Mario Kart 8 had to offer, and being able to explore it in free roam would be exhilarating. Since the base game already had quite a few snow-themed tracks, I think the DLC might go a little lighter on them. And now onto the desert region. Once again, since the base game has a good amount of desert tracks, I went a little lighter on the amount in the DLC. The only retro desert track I'm predicting is Dry Ruins. I just think this one makes sense. It's a super iconic desert track in Mario Kart, so I think having it in this game would be smart. For the new desert tracks, I have two. For one of them, I think if you combined a desert and a water track, there could be a lot of potential. If you can't tell, I think Nintendo missed a lot of opportunities with the driving on water mechanic in this game, and I want them to fix that for the DLC. I was picturing driving off the side of a desert mountain or something like that, while boulders fall into the water. This track could be called Rocky Riverside. I also think it would be cool if there was a desert track where you drive through a small town, since we haven't really had that in the past. The town could even be themed around Tostarena Town from Mario Odyssey. Since I'm lazy, that's what I'm gonna name the track. I'm thinking there could also be a small city region too. The main track here would be Mushroom City. Like Woohoo Island, I think Nintendo could use both Mushroom Bridge and Mushroom City as variants for this track. So once again, you're getting two tracks in one. I think Sunshine Airport could also be added not far from this track as well, since big cities usually tend to have busy airports. And imagine the view you'd have of the map gliding down from Sunshine Airport. It'd be awesome. And the new track I'd predict for this region is a dance club themed around Waluigi. It's been way too long since my favorite Mario character has gotten a track based on him, and a dance club suits him better than any other character. I've talked about this track in a previous video. I think the name for this track should be Waluigi Rave, and the overall design would be a cross of Waluigi Pinball and Electrodrome. Now onto the lava region. Since there aren't a lot of lava tracks in Mario Kart besides Bowser's Castle tracks, our options here are quite limited. The only lava-themed track that isn't a Bowser's Castle track is Grumble Volcano, but I wanted to avoid using that one if possible since it was just in Mario Kart 8. Thankfully, I came up with an alternative. The first retro track I'm predicting in this region is Lakeside Park. Surprisingly, there are no GBA tracks in this game, so I think Nintendo's definitely saving one or two for DLC. Lakeside Park would border onto both the grass and lava regions as it takes place in a jungle, but it has a volcano as well. The other retro track I'm predicting is Double Dash's Bowser's Castle. SNES, N64, and GBA Bowser's Castles have all been remade at one point or another, so now I think it's time we continue down the line to Double Dash. Plus, the base game doesn't have any retro Bowser's Castle tracks. This does make a bit of sense though, because it would be hard to fit two Bowser's Castles on the same map. For new tracks in the lava region, I thought of two. The first one I'm calling Bullet Bill Badlands. I think this could be almost like a Wastelands style track that's centered around some of the enemies in this game, as well as Bullet Bills of course. The other track I'm calling Bob-omb Factory. This would be a factory track with lots of explosives and machinery to avoid. I think it would be a cross between Toad's Factory and Bowser's Castle. This track would also be fitting if they added King Bob-omb as DLC. I got inspiration for this track from Bowser's Factory in the Mario Kart arcade game. The look of this track is super cool, but since it's an arcade game, there aren't really any obstacles. One more very quick region to go. I was thinking it'd be cool if there was a sky region as well. For the final cup of the DLC, I thought it'd be really cool if each track is more and more elevated into the sky as you get to drive towards, well, I think you know which track you'd be driving towards. The one and only retro track that I came up with for this region is GBA Rainbow Road. GBA Rainbow Road is next in line to be remade after N64 Rainbow Road. And as mentioned before, since Nintendo didn't add any GBA tracks to the base game, I think they're waiting to drop this one as DLC. Plus, with the rail grinding mechanics, you'd still be able to create some shortcuts the way you could in Super Circuit. The new tracks I thought of for this region, I think are pretty cool too. The first track I thought of is Kamek Stadium. This track would be elevated off the ground ever so slightly and themed around everyone's favorite item. Despite being in the air, the stadium would still be easy to get to. I was thinking there could be magic carpets that bring you to the stadium if you drive on them in free roam. The track itself wouldn't be too crazy. The difficulty would come from Kamek flying over you at all times, spawning enemies everywhere and adding several hazards to the track ahead that constantly change. As a side note, I was thinking this would be a great place to farm characters in free roam, since Kamek would always be there, and waiting for him in regular races is excruciating. The last track I'll talk about today is called Cloudy Chaos. In Grand Prix, after you beat Kamek Stadium, you'd fly up even higher to Cloudy Chaos. I was thinking this would be a challenging track that's sort of a cross between Cloud Top Cruise and Airship Fortress. There'd be airships everywhere launching projectiles at you. Bowser's minions would be trying to stop you in your tracks constantly. Even weather conditions like lightning could play a role in this track. Phew, that was a lot of tracks. Now it's time to organize them into cups. Here's the map of these tracks created to the best of my ability. I'm just going to use the same cup names in the base game for simplicity. The Mushroom Cup would consist of Skyway Highway, Blooper Playground, Cheep Cheep Lagoon, and Delfino Square. The Flower Cup would consist of Luigi Circuit, Wonderflower Frenzy, Wild Woods, and Mushroom City, specifically the Mushroom Bridge variant. The Star Cup would consist of Party Beach, Woohoo Island, specifically the Woohoo Loop variant, Daisy Cruiser, and Ocean Stormfront. The Shell Cup would consist of Sunshine Airport, Waluigi Rave, Sherbertland, and Mount Wario. The Banana Cup would consist of Rocky Riverside, Toast Arena Town, Dry Dry Ruins, and Woohoo Island, specifically the Maka Woohoo variant. The Leaf Cup would consist of Mushroom City, Diddy Kong Temple, Luigi's Mansion, and Banshee Boardwalk. The Lightning Cup would consist of Lakeside Park, Bullet Bill Badlands, Bob-omb Factory, and GCN Bowser's Castle. Lastly, the Special Cup would consist of Retro Raceway, Kamek Stadium, Cloudy Chaos, and GBA Rainbow Road. And those are my predictions for Mario Kart World DLC. Feel free to let me know what your predictions are for Mario Kart World DLC down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out a lot. Okay, bye.